you.
Hey.
He's a little already hammered.
That's the point.
Look, I don't practice sangria.
I got no crystal ball. Well, I had a million drinks and
I drank them all.
It's like me now. Oh my God.
So, National Disabilities, Superheroes and Disabilities are what we're going to be talking about. National Deaf Awareness Month is coming up. And we kind of wanted to talk about, first of all, why there are not more deaf heroes. We've seen blind. We've seen physically disabled via wheelchair with Oracle. And Professor Xavier. But we don't have a lot of deaf superheroes. And that's weird to me. And I don't get it. And I don't like it. So, the first of all, like, guys, representation does matter. People like seeing themselves on screen. Deaf superheroes are a thing, or in books, or somewhere. So, and it's interesting that the Glass trailer just dropped, because that actually made me think of this even more, because Elijah's a supervillain. I would even settle for a deaf supervillain.
Right.
Like, just some representation, because there's like three deaf superheroes I can think of off the top of my head.
I feel like I know more. I know more deaf superheroes, or in geek culture, fiction, than I do than you see in movies and TV combined.
And that's still less.
Because it's really just indicative of like a greater problem where you don't see that. I mean, I'm just trying to think of like, when was the last time I saw the depiction of a person with hearing loss or who was deaf? I'm like, God, is it like Children of a Lesser God? How far back do I go?
The West Wing.
Because that's
the last one I thought I could think of. Marley Matlin's character on The West Wing.
It's always Marley Matlin.
And which is the other thing. I can't imagine that there are not other deaf actors and actresses out there.
Or just a depiction of ASL being used, or any form of sign language being used like in the peripheral, in the way you see it happen in the world. You go to a grocery store and you see people communicating through ASL.
And there is closed caption. We can if you haven't learned sign language, which I know the alphabet, that's all I really remember from when we were taught.
It's funny.
In school. But there's closed caption for a reason.
It's my favorite word.
I mean, it was funny because we met up with friends of ours. Hi, John and Alana. And Alana's son was communicating through ASL. And so, I was like, oh my God, I finally met somebody after, I shit you not, 20 years, who's speaking. My ASL is terrible. It used to be good, but it's real bad now. But I at least was able to communicate with him. And I'm like, why do I not see people like him in our media at all? And like I said, you thought Children of the Lesser God, which is at least that's from when we were infants.
Kids, babies.
And I like it. Literally, the first character I think of was Marley Matlin's character on The West Wing, and that is the last representation of a deaf character that I saw.
Mr. Holland's Opus.
Yeah.
Which is still not new. That's still 20 years ago.
I don't even remember that.
It's his son.
That's right. And not treat it like it's a handicap, which is the other thing. Which is like treating it like it makes you lesser, which is the other.
Making it like pitiable, making it sympathetic, making it, a plot device.
Yes. And I'm just like, why though? So speaking to that, we wanted to talk about the few deaf superheroes that we do have. So apparently these two fools, excuse me, didn't know who Echo was.
I didn't know who Echo was.
And Allie tried to look her up, and she's so new to the Marvel Comics universe.
No. I'm not new.
No, Echo.
Oh, okay.
Echo is so new to the Marvel Comics universe.
I was like, excuse me.
We know that you are not new to the Marvel Comics universe, Miss. I have all of my comic books alphabetized. from like the 60s that were given to me.
My Marvel Encyclopedia is, I guess, an older edition, so it's 2009. So this was a character, and I mean, I don't only know characters from my encyclopedia, but it's a newer character.
She
is.
But
99.
Newer.
I mean, what gets me is that it took that long to get a character.
Yeah.
At all. I don't know if DC even has any, but Echo is from Marvel. And what's interesting is that I don't know how many of you guys remember the Ronin run, where there was this badass superhero and everybody was like, who is this? And everybody assumed.
Thought it was Daredevil.
Yeah, everybody assumed that Ronin was either Daredevil or Wolverine in disguise or something like that. And everybody assumed that it was a dude. And this was brilliant on Bendis' part, then the mask finally came off and everybody was like, say what? Because it was Echo. Echo is the adopted daughter of Kingpin, and which comes with its own challenges. The least of which is that Kingpin pretty much told her that Matt Murdock was a good man, but that Daredevil was evil. And I feel like this was around the time where he knew who Daredevil was, and he basically sent her off like a type bomb right at Daredevil to find out, and that was a really great storyline. So like she went for Daredevil as Echo, and like meanwhile her and Matt are sort of like kind of dating. They're like floating around each other. He was like, I need you to help me convince Matt that I'm a good man. And he was like, I know that you know all the good I've done in the world, but Matt has been brainwashed by Daredevil into thinking that I'm a bad person. And because Matt's so sweet and naive, and I'm like, oh my God, what are you even doing? You're gaslighting your own kid. And so like, it was a great run. So if you haven't read it, read it. And so they were sort of dating, and Daredevil, she was able to, she realized that he was echolocating, so she was able to read his body language. And so when they fought, they were evenly matched, because he couldn't do what he does with everyone else, which is read. She's so silent, and he couldn't do everything like the way he was doing with everything else. It was just a really well written story. But my favorite thing was when it was revealed that she was Ronin, and the fans lost their minds. And this was before apparently it was not okay for female characters to exist. Apparently, I don't know. That's a whole other podcast where we need to talk about when it became not okay for people of color and women to have leading roles. Like, people conveniently forget that Rhodey was Iron Man for quite some time, but. Okay.
This is not the same Ronin that we've seen in...
No, that's Ronin the Accuser.
Okay, so this is just
Ronin.
This is an I-N.
I-N, correct.
And not an... So
A-N.
Just
yes, not Ronin the Accuser. Ronin, which is after the, I want to say Japanese samurai. It's a samurai who has no loyalty.
Groovy.
So that's what she became. And it was interesting that... First of all, I love the fact that Bendis wrote the character and didn't do any obvious signposts that it was a woman. I really like that, because I feel like I was watching a video with Simone Missick and I want to say from Gabrielle Dennis, and how like you read pages and pages and pages of a script, and all of these characters are rich and full of color, and then you get to Ariel, who's black at 35, and it's like they have 5 lines and there's no depth to them. And it's like, oh, none of these other characters could be women or women of color. Got it. And Bendis didn't do that. He wrote this rich character, and everybody assumed that it was a guy because the character was so well written and so smart. And so it's sad that it took until about 2010 for us to get that, and then he basically had to trick people into caring for the character.
Do you think Echo would show up in the Netflix?
I would love it if Echo showed up in the Netflix series, especially since with the way the Defenders ended, where it looks like they're doing the oh my god, my brain just completely hard stopped. Yeah, I'm gonna blame the sangria. Where they're doing the not One More Day, that's Spider-Man. the Daredevil storyline where he doesn't remember who he is, but he has all the physical he has sense memory of what he can do, but he doesn't quite remember because of the extent of his injuries. And so that's how, in the comics, how Kingpin figured out, because Daredevil disappeared, so that Matt Murdock and Kingpin's not stupid. So I think that there's an even chance if they did bring her in, it would be a really interesting storyline, and I would be 100% for that.
Especially after the Elektra. It would be nice to have another
female character.
Female character that is on the borderline of good, evil.
Yeah.
Again, he's saying samurai again.
Yeah.
That can box some more with him.
Yeah. Sexy boxing.
That's sexy
boxing.
Sexy
boxing. Ooh, sexy boxing.
I would be amazingly down for something like that.
Allie's like, I'm here for your sexy boxing.
I'm here for this sexy boxing.
So going from, I really wish they do it now. I hadn't thought of that.
See?
And I'm like,
who brings value to your life?
I love it.
Speaking of characters who currently exist in the MCU, Clint Barton is also deaf, which a lot of people, you had forgotten.
I had forgotten because I had read, the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye, kind of like back to back in the trades.
Yeah.
And that is like one of the biggest signposts at the end of Volume 4.
Yeah.
Where when that happens, I'm like, holy shit, because that's kind of where I stopped and picked up with the Kate Bishop story and everything. But I was like, shit, I forgot that happened.
Yep.
And I feel like that's one of the first times you see that. I feel like that's it's a trope in movies, the gunshot, by the ear,
and people don't
the
really
gunshot
think about
deafness. And just like immediately recovers, or it's like explained away. Like I was just watching the Office episode where Dwight fires the gun, and like Andy's like, "Oh, it's gonna take like weeks for my ruptured eardrum to repair."
It's like, no, that's not how that works.
Back to normal like the next week.
Yeah.
And you forget there's like this permanence, and it's not the same kind of permanence that happens with a lot of other like superhero injuries or something. It's not
it's not retconned out.
Yeah,
it hasn't been retconned out.
It's explored and it's played with, and I think that's really
that's
interesting.
How Mockingbird, that was the only way it was gonna work. It had to be deaf.
Somebody doesn't like Mockingbird.
Well, that was okay. Side note. Best cosplay. I enjoyed being Crossfire because I got to kill Hawkeye on his wedding night.
I'm so glad I didn't drink when I started to drink. I got to murder him
on his wedding night.
So, if you haven't read the Matt Fraction run on Hawkeye, what are you even doing right now? Go out and get it now. But yeah, so Hawkeye has been deaf since that run, and watching the character adjust.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, he could get a cochlear implant. Tony could use his nanotech to fix it. Because in the comic books, Clint Barton isn't a giant douchebag, and he's one of my favorite characters. And I'm still pissed that the MCU shit all over him as hard as they did.
They took out all the interesting parts.
Yeah, to make him this angry, random douchebag that culminated in Civil War. And he does. I don't know if they played to Jeremy Renner's strengths. Yeah, I threw that shade. Or
like Superman with a beach umbrella.
Yeah.
I'm we don't need to direct him.
Just let him be him.
Just go. Yeah. Say your line.
Or I don't know. But I wish that they had incorporated that even a little bit into the films. I wish that we had seen that, because can you think of how major it would have been if it just been a throwaway line, like Tony ears,
right.
Or something like make sure my comm is set up differently, or anything.
Well, and watching him go through that, I mean, you have people, right, who were born without hearing.
Yep.
And then you have, somebody who, in this case, who has experienced, trauma.
Yes.
And is having to deal with that. And I think, there was a certain amount of honesty to that. And like, as you're watching, as I was reading it, like looking back, I'm like, it was very, like, oh, I feel like this is going to be a real thing. Like,
yeah.
they're not messing around with this whole thing and just making it like disposable thing. And I think the problem I have with a lot of, characters who don't have sight, vision is the problem that, like, when you give a blind character a superpower, it's the superpower of sight. Daredevil is a blind superhero whose superpower is that he can see.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. I mean, I love Daredevil. Don't get me wrong, but
that's basically what his superpower is.
Yeah.
I will say, with the movies anyway. So with Hawkeye, yes.
I love that he immediately just started growling.
There are like slight inclinations that, yes, hearing impaired, deaf. You know the character, you know that already, but you're seeing this, strong badass character that is doing everything else that an actual person with superpowers or mutant abilities is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it kind of uplifts that a little bit.
A little bit. I think that
It could have become better.
It could have
as
been
a character.
Yeah,
I think just that nod of it wasn't totally like, yes, he's deaf, pointed out, kind of made it like.
Well, I don't think he is deaf in the MCU.
No.
No?
No. He's not deaf in the MCU. They ignore that huge part of who the character is. But they base pretty much everything else about him on the Ultimates in the Fraction run.
Okay.
So, but they just ignore this huge part of who the character is in the
I just
films.
thought he was like lip reading every time he saw somebody.
No.
Okay.
It's because he has superior sight. Did you just lose Sangria? Okay.
Sangria and your gum.
And your gum.
Things happen.
Game over.
Things happen when you're
Game
reviewing.
over.
Just need that sweet.
Okay, well then, you know what? I have been watching these movies totally wrong. I was like...
I know you're eating. And apparently watching the Avengers movies all wrong. Assuming that Clint Barton's deafness is acknowledged.
Well, no, I don't hate his character.
I mean, it's interesting, like, I almost feel like the time for the Hawkeye series has passed, and that would have been a wonderful time to explore.
Like Black Widow.
Yeah.
It's come and
It's
gone.
gone. Yeah, we don't care about Black Widow
anymore.
anymore.
Budapest movie anymore.
Yeah, and like if they had done a Netflix series with Hawkeye or Black Widow or both, that would have been a great way to explore his deafness. And they could have done all the things that Age of Ultron did sloppily at best. That movie, I just love watching both of your faces go.
What are you talking about?
You mean the movie? No, we can't ignore the movie because we got stuck with the Scarlet Bitch. So now, like, I can't. Yeah,
the other Olsen.
Yeah. Ugh. So like, we can't ignore Age of Ultron because we lost Quicksilver and we get stuck with the Scarlet Bitch. And I'm just like, yeah. And that's, this is about to turn into a whole Hawkeye thing, which I did not want. But
I
like,
have no strings to hold me down.
oh, for fuck's sake, I'm sorry.
We get at least one F word, right?
Right?
What is this, PG-13?
There are no strings.
There are no strings. I wish they had, if they had just deepened his character logically instead of, pushing in the lore. And the thing is, Laura Barton in the comics is great. It's a great character. But it's so out of nowhere, and it so makes no sense in the context of what we were given in the previous movies, including Thor. And then we have the whole, we're ignoring him being deaf. I love that you thought he was just lip reading. We're ignoring his
assumptions.
Character work up until this. So I wish we had gotten a Matt Fraction run based Hawkeye series.
I wouldn't care if they just did it.
Yeah.
Got a new actor.
Ooh.
And just did
for the part, right? Seriously?
I don't know.
No. Matt Damon. Oh God, no. God, no.
Every time I say his name, it has to be that guy.
That's true. They wanted Jensen Ackles from Supernatural. He was literally
I don't know
cast
what that
first. Did you not know that? He was cast first, and Warner Brothers wouldn't let him out of his
I
contract.
need an adult. Something
do.
is happening over here.
Yeah, Allie.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm really excited. When you
He
say
was
his name, I get excited.
He read for Captain America, and they were like, "You're too young." Even though he and Chris Evans are pretty much the same age, but he looks younger than Chris Evans. And so he read for, they had him come in for Hawkeye, and he was cast first, but Warner's wouldn't let him out of his contract to film. And I'm like, on the one hand, I feel like he dodged a bullet with the terrible things that they did with the character. But as Ron pointed out, if they had the better actor, it would have been a better character.
You know who would have been my Hawkeye?
Who?
Paul Walker.
Oh,
Yeah.
he would have been
I
a
mean,
good
it's
one.
sad now.
He would have been a good one.
But like, I
Ooh.
think of
Maybe
when
it
I think
would've-
of the Matt Fraction
maybe it would've
blonde
saved
ass
his-
Hawkeye.
Maybe it would have saved his life. It would have gotten out.
Right.
I mean,
I did a little Thunderdome there.
No, I'm just like, that.
see now I'm
Quick
just
far.
sad. So what would you want if they did do? I like the idea of just going, screw it. This is phase 4. I mean, especially since apparently we're going to be visiting the multiverse in the fourth and final Avengers movie. Look, we got to wrap this shit up somehow.
Recastings.
I mean, what do we do? Do we like?
I want Kate Bishop.
Yes.
And I want the mantle passed, and then Clint Barton can go hang out wherever.
But do we think that there's potential in having like Deaf Clint Barton like
I
fractions?
think that won't. I mean, I don't see any way that works or happens unless you make another character, unless you Ant-Man it, unless you make another character.
Clint Barton.
Or
Or unless you say the multiverse Clint Barton came through.
right, or you have like Scott Lang, where like he's basically being Hank Pym minus Hank Pym, like.
Well, I don't know. Scott's
he's
trash
that,
too.
Right, but I mean, what I mean is like his version of Ant-Man is kind of a mixture. It's kind of an amalgam of like of both comic book Ant-Man. Those are two prominent comic book Ant-Man.
Except for without all the wife beating.
Right. So you skip ahead. In the same way that like Hope is sort of just like a separate kind of character. Like
Yes.
she's bits and pieces,
and
she's also essentially Jane.
Yeah.
In this universe.
Without taking away, and that's the thing that they did really well. Jumping subjects a little bit, but that's the thing they did really well with Ant-Man was that Jan, they didn't take anything away from Jan.
Right.
Hope's still a badass and of her own right. She's still a fully rounded, complete person. But there's enough of Jan in her that you can see our original Wasp, who was on the original team of Avengers. There. But, so, if you were creating a superhero who was deaf, first of all, what would you want?
If I was creating a superhero that was deaf?
From scratch.
From scratch.
From scratch.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely more of the spandex era. So I want something like fluorescent, brightly colored. Flying is pretty fun, so let's throw that.
How would that work with the deafness?
Flying.
I mean,
Bats. Hello.
That's true.
you just have to have like a large.
But bats do echolocation.
Yeah. I'm not.
They do vibration.
I don't want a deaf character's superpower is hearing.
Yeah. I want a deaf character who can fly, but their power isn't being able to hear. If that makes sense.
So, okay, so take that back.
That would be a teleport.
I mean, look,
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Can you imagine how awesome it would be? It would be like Nightcrawler or Cloak, but deaf.
Right. But deaf.
That would be amazing. Which we have to do a whole other podcast on how amazing. Cloak and Dagger wraps up in 2 more episodes, you guys. And so we're gonna have to wrap. We're gonna have to
Give
do
me time
one.
to catch up.
Yeah, because it's so good.
I think what I would want to see. I think it's good to see people like. Sorry, I'm all over the place. I think it's good to see depictions of people who are born with certain disabilities. Because I think
that makes me feel better.
It's okay.
I think when you meet people who, have been deaf their entire lives, or have been without sight their entire lives, or have been like, experiencing the disability that they have and have grown up with it, you have a certain attitude. And I think that's really cool. As a character, because then you get past that very quickly.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, this is just about the character, and we are not going to continue coming back to the pain of this experience.
Yes.
At the same time, having somebody going through that, having somebody with, develop a disability and struggle with that makes a relatable. It shortcuts, yes. It's kind of a trouble because you're like, this is somebody makes like me, that journey. Now they're experiencing this thing that is very foreign to me, very different from me, and I'm watching them go through it. And I feel like there's a weird balance in that depiction of like, would you want to see somebody go through that experience and see how things are different for them and you learn it as they learn it? Or you just meet somebody and that's just who they are?
I have a question. Why not both?
Exactly.
I feel like...
Damn it, I was gonna... Yeah.
I feel like the little girl in the commercial. Why not both?
So, how you have the Daredevil Daredevil, yes, he can't see, but he can see because...
He uses echolocation.
So, possibly, like, having the feelers out, spidey sense, kind of.
Yeah. Or superior sight, which is the thing they sort of touch on in the films, which Hawkeye has.
But that's kind of, I mean, the norm. That's nothing spectacular.
Which is what would make it awesome to me.
I mean, I definitely want to see, like,
I still say
sign
flying.
language. Sign
Yes.
language engaged.
Yes.
And not just, like, I mean, like, how, that it's a completely different thing. But in Speechless,
yes.
how that, it does not go away.
No.
It does not get shortcutted. It is an integral part of the show.
Yes.
Having that board.
Yes.
And having that level. Like, having ASL be a constant.
Yes.
Every time someone is signing. Every time someone is signing.
Because of that show, or what it is exactly, but since that show has come out, I have noticed more non-deaf people using it.
Yeah.
Like, even at Artscape.
Yeah.
Like, and they were noticeably not deaf, they were... But
that's
they were
because...
just using it as an... And it was what... I mean, this obviously, sorry.
We talk with our hands.
I do. I'm a very hand-talky person.
But I think that's why shows like Speechless, I think going to the overall topic, I think that's why it's important that we see more deaf characters in general, and specifically superheroes. Kids need to see people who look like them doing impossible things, because that means that the possible things are no sweat.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. It's Obama in the White House with the little boy touching his head and seeing that the President of the United States has the same type of hair as me. It's little things. Kids need to see people who look like them doing extraordinary things. And I think that's why it bothers me so much that I literally, like Signs and Voices, which is a comic book that you can pick up, is the only comic book that I can think of, and it's an independent comic book, that every character is disabled. And it's no big deal. Because they're well-rounded, fully fledged characters who happen to be deaf or blind, and they're all superheroes, and no one but the bad guy seems to have a problem with it.
Yeah.
And why does it have to be such a big deal? I think other thing is that we, as people who have sight or hearing, tend to think that it is a disability when it's not. It's just a different part of your brain that's being used. So you do see better. Or, one thing, you lose one thing, but something else comes up.
Enhances.
Yeah.
And it isn't really about, like, the obstacle. Like,
yes.
the depiction of that.
Thank you.
But I think there is a way of addressing the reality of this. Like, instead of saying this is a tragedy.
Yes. That.
Instead of saying this is a tragedy, talk about address the everyday differences in day-to-day life. The everyday differences between, a person with sight and a person without, a person with hearing and a person without, and not telegraph them, not spend hours,
Yes.
not spend every single panel, making a big deal out of it, but just treating it as a reality. This is a person's reality. These are things that they encounter. These are things that they overcome, or these are things that are normal to them. We have so many different comic books. Like every book, every couple of years, comes out with a silent issue.
You're right.
There's no dial, silent issue, and that's a gimmick. But it would be the perfect format to
tell that story.
To tell the story, and even do one that's without caption, where
Yes.
you have no dialogue, but sign language being employed in a way that if you understood what those signs were, you could see them on the page and be like, I know what they're saying,
Right.
but not have a translation.
Yeah.
And still, move the comic book forward, have people understand what's happening and figure it out, just like you would in a silent book.
Or a silent movie.
Right. But then if you do understand,
it's even richer.
You get a little bit more out of it,
It's
and
a richer
everybody in the
feeling.
audience still gets something. Like I think you could depict, you could do an entire series, you could do an entire comic series. It's
I'm
done
just
often
saying.
enough. You can do an entire comic book
I
series
mean,
without any words or captions, and have it be because you have a character who is without hearing.
A Quiet Place made a ton of money for a reason, y'all.
Yeah.
It was one of the most, other than Get Out, one of the most terrifying films I've seen in quite some time. So I'm just saying there is something to it. And again, I just keep coming back to people need to see themselves. I think we marginalize people, and we all do it. We don't realize we're doing it. Whether, but everybody marginalizes someone else. And I think if certain things are seen more often, then it becomes a given. It's interesting, like when we were doing the shoot this weekend, and I was talking about how, and this is slightly off topic, but I was talking about how Domino has, in Deadpool 2, Domino has vitiligo. It's a specific, I can never say it right, but it's the skin pigmentation station. Yeah. And so that was how her domino was. And for me, it wasn't a big deal. And then someone said to me, but it was a big deal for a lot of people because they've never seen themselves. And it was such a little thing, but I know people who have it, and it's not something that occurs to me to be a big deal. Yeah. And so I'm like, is that really? And then I'm realizing, yes, when you've literally never seen yourself on screen because it's always covered up. To have not only a character, but a badass, sexy superhero with the same thing that you have is amazing. And I'm like, that's what we should have had with Clint.
I will say, film has come a long way.
True.
It has a long way to go as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like with open conversation, enough critics, enough fans, and the right writers.
That's key. Bendis, we're talking to you. Please help.
And I mean, there is talent everywhere.
Yeah.
And they just need to grasp a little bit farther than the red carpet sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, there shouldn't be the only actress, and I can't even think of an actor who we can think of who's deaf, is Marlee Matlin. And you can't tell me that there are not other actors out there.
We've been going that well for a long time.
Yeah.
And thank goodness she is an
there.
amazing spokesperson and an outspoken voice and a voice of humor and empathy. Yeah. But
she should be the only one.
Why is she the only pillar?
That would be like if Viola Davis was the only black actress we ever saw. Ever. That's what it would be like. Or if the standard bearer was Jennifer Lopez. I just made Pete's face sad.
I'm thinking just that all my Mexican friends who were like, Puerto Rican plays Selena! No! No! They're still mad. I will call them up right now and be like, hey, how do you feel about Jennifer Lopez being Selena?
I also think that people they're finally realizing we want to see some no-name people.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see some hidden talent, and that's making more money as well now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see some hidden figures.
I do love me some hidden figures. I do.
And on that note, this is Belle.
This is Pete.
This is Allie.
And we are here from Pop Culture Uncovered.
It's true.
You can find us at PC Uncovered on Twitter and Instagram, popcultureuncovered.com, Pop Culture Uncovered on Facebook. Thanks for hanging with us.
Bye.
Bye. Drink up, fool. Drink. Wait, do you not have any alcohol?
I don't know the alcohol there.
Well, what the hell, man?
It's just ice.
Well, that
You
just
can find
seems
us at
wrong.
Pop Culture Uncovered
Just
at his
ice.
mom's house. Oh!